Just a second where there's an issue before it loads up and shows us live streaming.
Yeah.
Da, da, da,
It's told
da.
me it's on YouTube.
Okay, good. That's a start. And I'm looking for it now. Okay, I see it because I need to grab the link really quick and go ahead and put this in the Authentic Collective. Hey, ladies, if anybody, oh, well, I'm saying this now because I'm always pretending like the video's like already streaming. So when people come back and watch the replay, they're not like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But hey, ladies, okay, I'm getting ready to live stream the convo that we told you all was coming with the gentleman that I've collaborated with in the past on quite a few occasions to have a candid convo basically about how white people help us, period. Damn it, that messed up. You guys, hold up one second. It didn't give me the option to expand to, um, and in the group, just so you guys know, I'm calling this Race Convo with Spain, or just a lack of, y'all know me and my titles, for lack of a better way to put it there. Um,
It's better to be honest.
yeah, I mean, that's what it is. It's so much easier when I just do this from the starting point of da 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 da. Are we streaming? Are we streaming? Yes, there we go. Saved. It's in the group. All right. So we'll see if some people chime in within the community, but they can always come back and watch the replay. So for anybody that happens to chime in, beautiful people, let me tell you what is going on at the moment. Mike is someone that I met, I guess it's been about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago on social media. We engaged each other on IG. He was a guest on my podcast. We had a very,
First
very,
time.
yeah, we had a very, very candid conversation about disability, entrepreneurship, pressing through when you were at a disadvantage. And then I've been on, matter of fact, I was on your summit with you at the top of 2020, the Biz
You
Kickstart.
were. Yeah.
And so we developed a relationship and had conversations here and there in the past. And so recently he reached out to me and he's like, who do I talk to? And where do we begin this dialogue about how he can help with all of the with everything that's going on without even getting into that part of the convo. And so some of you, as you watch this video, you're going to have mixed emotions. There was a pre-conversation in the background because what I don't really want to happen, and there's still going to be some of this dialogue in this conversation because the other ladies get to ask their questions and speak their piece. When you all come back to ask your questions, whether it's in the community or on YouTube, please understand this. I've already explained to him that he has to have the compassion and the patience to understand that he's going to get the brunt of the blow because he's Caucasian. And that the energetically, the questions that we ask and the things that we have to say is because we've been damaged at the hands of people that look like him. Because the question is, why now? Now, that's what I presented to him. But let me also present this to you. Every once in a while, I have to make sure that I play devil's advocate and I have a very antagonistic view, even with Black people. So some of you have no idea what I was planning to do with this conversation either, because it's for two totally different reasons. But the same question can be asked of Black people. Why now? We can ask Mike, why now? George Floyd, that's all you need to see. What about Sandra Bland? What about Eric Gardner? But why now even with us? Why do we just now fight? And so we can have that dialogue a little bit just to at least make sure we get his statement of
Yeah.
qualification that he's sincere, but at the same time, we've got a lot to answer for ourselves. And I know that many of us are exhausted. We're tired of talking to white people. We feel like we're tired of explaining. We don't understand why they don't get it. We don't understand why they don't get white privilege and all of these other things. But at the end of the day, the honest to goodness truth is that the level of calamity that is going on in our country and countries abroad, this is something that's way bigger and much more sophisticated than just racial brutality of the brutality of Black people. We're talking about economic, financial structures, political power, and a whole bunch of other things. And so at some point, we have to realize, just like even with Dr. King, there were some white people that were getting sprayed with hoses, that were getting bitten with dogs, that were called nigger lovers, and they were being noosed too. Now, that was a way of life for us, and it was just something that happened to some of them for deciding to join the movement. And, and unfortunately for us, we don't know how deeply invested some white people want to be in this movement, but we also have to make sure that we're not unnecessarily antagonistic when white people do say, how do we join the movement? How do we help? And believe that, nobody really ever wants to help us, because then that's when we go into full-blown victim mode. So that's just my little bit of a spin and some things put in there. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I am going to moderate to a degree if I feel like we got to be succinct in thought. So you ladies, and gentlemen, make sure you collect your thought before you get ready to, speak, so that we can try to keep our comments between about 2 to 5 minutes to give other people time to respond. And then also, let's make sure that we're conscious, ladies, which at the end of the day, sisters naturally are, that too many of us aren't speaking to him at the same time. Because if Trisha goes in and then that makes Camille say, ooh, it's like, hold up. We, give one thought a chance to be listened to, and let him give his response, and then begin to continue to piggyback, which means we may have to do something as simple as literally have a pen and a pad to make sure that you don't forget your note, your thought, or your question, and not leave with anxiousness. But let's make sure that we keep this polite. So we've already had our pre-conversation. Who would like to start the dialogue with Mike before we get into the bones and the meat, not just the bones of how he can help support us in the movement? Go ahead, Camille.
I do want to say, just Mike, thank you. Because, one of the things that I like to make sure that folks understand is that allyship is not something is not a title you can just give yourself. There's hard work involved in it. And a lot of that hard work involves being able to have difficult conversations, but not waiting for the difficult conversations to be started, but actually coming in and starting them. So I want to thank you for being willing to present yourself to be able to receive that exceptional identity as ally by the end of this. So thank you for that. But there was something that was said in the pre-conversation. I think it's really important in terms of us being able to really understand how to best work with and be able to know where to start. And it's that whole notion of gatekeeping the need for transparency and how we teach our children. And I think there are places where, there's that African proverb that until the lion is able to share his own story, the hunter is always going to be glorified. And right now the lion is starting to roar and get its voice, and the hunter don't know what to do about that, because the hunter's been telling this story for years. So how do we now accept the narrative of the lion as also truth, as opposed to condemning it? And I think a lot of the tensions that we see come from that. We're trying to tell our story. We're trying to tell our truth. But because the hunter story has been glorified for centuries, it makes it difficult for people to be able to hear it. So how do we make sure that we have space for our stories to also be true? Imani's on here. It's a question she asks all the time in her work. What else might also be true? And that's really what we're asking for in this moment in time. So I'm thinking about the ways in which we can, where you can assist in helping us make space for our story to be told, to be heard, and to be acknowledged as truth and not just emotion.
That's a very, very, very good point. And I think in some ways it would depend on, this is the wrong, by the way. So I'm going to put it now. I'm going to say now is wrong, right? It would depend on the space. And as soon as I said it, I'm like, no, it shouldn't. It shouldn't depend on the space. It shouldn't depend on where it is. It shouldn't depend on when it is. It shouldn't have, because you mentioned gatekeeping, that is the same thing. Saying that it has to depend on where it shows up is what gatekeeping is. And when you mention, what else has to be true, that was mine. That was the question I asked myself when I first heard the element of white privilege being different to being racial. That's what made me think, okay, if it was true, what would happen? And what else I also had to do was I had to change my definition of what privilege was. I don't know if this is something you're probably all thinking the same thing, but when you compare yourself, you instantly think the other person's more privileged than you or had it easier than you, or you come up with a narrative, right? And in my head, I was thinking, okay, if, and this is a big if it was true, which now we know that it is, at the time it was an if, now it was like, yeah, it is. So it was like, okay, if it was true, what would happen? And I go, okay, well, for a start, I would struggle to leave my house. I would struggle to go out. That's horrible. How would people live that way? And truth is you're struggling, right? So that's that kind of comes into it. So I was like, okay, what else? Okay, would I want to allow my kids to walk to school? Probably not. If like, because for me, it's like, yeah, I don't have that. In some places, I probably would, depending on where I lived, right? No matter what, right? There are angry people everywhere. But when it comes to that side of it, I had to analyze what I was assuming was just normal, and having to turn around and say, okay, well, what if it wasn't normal? What if it was different? And I had to turn around to myself and say, a lot of this is literally just because of the way that you look. That, because obviously there are other things that come into it, and I'm not even going to speak on those. The fact that it's just because of the way that you look is horrible. There's no excuse for that. You know, I wouldn't do it, but just because I wouldn't doesn't mean other people don't. So this was another thought in my head. Just because I'd like to think of myself as a nice guy, right? Doesn't mean everybody is. Doesn't mean everyone is like that. And I get it. Situation to situation, in my head, that makes perfect sense. Be a good person, right? But the cultural side, I had to question myself. I had to say, in some ways, I'm guilty of it. Because it's a subconscious assumption that is built over, like we all know the education system in the UK is hundreds of years old and hasn't changed. So there's an issue there about what we're taught just in general. Never mind, all this stupid stuff that goes on around, we're only training people's memories, right? Which is another issue as well. But we don't change. That's the issue for us, which is why I moved. It's because we haven't changed. We don't do anything. We have the stiff upper lip, keep going, everything will work out in the end kind of mentality that I don't like. I don't like that. I don't like the holding on to something. I don't like the idea that it's all going to work out in the end. And then we have our eyes covered. We're shown only what they want us to see. And I think a big part of it is it shouldn't matter. Where you tell your story shouldn't matter. It should be allowed. It should be allowed. We should just assume that it's allowed. And the more people see it, because you've got, it shouldn't even be permission based. It should just be, yeah. There shouldn't be, because the gatekeeping implies permission, right? The gatekeeping implies you have to be allowed to do it. It should just be, do it. There shouldn't be no one should say yeah. No one should go, because that implies they could say no. That's why I'm not a big believer in like telling someone, yeah, you can do it. Because it's like, hang on, you tell me you could say I can't do it. So that is an issue that you probably face. Is you might feel like someone is holding the key when it may or may not be. It probably is. I think one of the reasons why the world is so different now, and I mentioned in the pre-session, I was talking to somebody else that was I don't know, I think she was black or person of color, and she said, look, person of color is fine for me because I don't like getting stuff wrong. I have this with like my podcast as well. I've got to get names right. So I'm going to make sure that I don't offend people by getting stuff wrong. But she said that a lot of it is because it's a generational thing in some ways. Because now we're exposed to everything. Social media has opened up this world of like little kids are seeing other little kids doing like crazy stuff online, and there's like, but
Can you
50
do me
or
do me a favor?
60-year-olds
Slow down for. I got you, Mike. But do me a
That's
favor.
okay.
Slow down for a second. No, I mean because and only because I'm paying attention to the time and how
I'm
long.
talking too quickly.
And so one thing I'll say, it's one of those things where if you have conversations with different Black people are different, and some Black people are mixed. They may be Latino and Black and all of this other stuff. The reason why a lot of Black people have an issue with people of color is because people of color and Black people is not the same. While they may have some similarities, in some negative experiences, just like Jews could say they have some similarities because of the Holocaust, that it's the Black man or woman is specifically targeted. And so when you look at the privileges that Asians, for instance, get in the United States, they're people of color. And so we want to make sure that there's a distinction. And I even had to battle with that when I transitioned my branding, going to Black people and like, wait a minute, but some Black people are mixed with this. And at the end of the day, for me, it's all about identity. Regardless of what you're mixed with, do you identify as Black? And do you feel the Black experience? And there are some of them that are out there that may even be blind to the fact that they are Black, and until they get dogged out enough, then maybe they'll come back. But that's just to make sure that distinction is there. And I even want to just put this out there really briefly to all of the Black people that happen to chime into this, that something like that, we got to be really careful when we engage in dialogue about arguing over wordsmithing. When it bothers you, express it. But when a white person comes by and you be like, oh my God, I'm here for the POC. I'm not people, I'm Black. It's like one of those things, you just be calm and you put emphasis on it. Hostility is when you gonna disrespect me and call me out of my name, but we don't have time for that petty level of conversation. Make the distinction. This is my name, this is my title, this is what I identify as, and then accordingly, like we do with all of the other stuff, we call people whatever they want to call them. That I want to say, as far as that is concerned. Now I want to fast forward something, and then of course, and Imani, I saw your hand up. You go next. I hear a lot about what you're saying with the educational system. We know that, and we got the same thing, memorization, all of that stuff, and here in the United States. And we can have that dialogue to a degree that that's the way you guys are trained. That's what you saw. That's what you know. That's how you live. But the whole thing at the end of the day is making sure we are being extremely intentional about having the dialogue about moving forward, because that's what it was. But what is real now? Key questions for people that are going to want to surround themselves around you. One key question I have is, how much money do you spend with Black owned businesses? I've been in your summits before, and I can honestly say, and this is no disrespect to you, I know that I gave excellent high caliber interviews, but not a single person from your summit bought my sales book. Not a single person from your summit reached out to me. And I can tell you right now that when I put on my summits, regardless of what race you are, anybody can learn from them. But as soon as white people see a bunch of faces and they're Black, oh, that's for Black people. So you got to think about that subconscious trigger in your own mind. But when you guys put on something and it's predominantly white people, the understanding is that any and everybody should watch it. So my question is if you really want to be a part of this movement, and you don't have to give the full-blown spiel of it, how are you going to reposition your dollar? Because if you really, really care about us, economic power is ultimate power, and white people have to decide that they are going to change their behavioral spending habits and start investing in our communities.
That's a very good point as well, because I would buy something. If I wanted it, I would buy it. It doesn't really matter who's selling it. But having said that, there will be people that do make a judgment call. There will be people that do have I was talking to a lot of people before this, and we're like, look, there's a built-in assumption that if I'm Black, or whatever sort of term that you want to, as you mentioned, sort of the idea of being identified as something, right? And there's an assumption that even though she owns the company, if someone was to walk into that company, there'd be an assumption that they didn't own it. There'd be an assumption that they were like the help, right? And that's horrible. That shouldn't be there. You shouldn't have to wear the badge that says, "Hey, I own this joint," right? You should have the respect, if you will, no matter what. You should have the that to me, that shouldn't even happen. I wouldn't do that. That doesn't mean other people do. So it becomes, as you mentioned, moving forwards, is it's not about me. Because while other people didn't buy it, I can't speak to that. Obviously, everyone's got their own sort of whatever it was. Maybe they didn't want it. Maybe there is that sort of white privilege assumption there that I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it. I am working my way past it. This is a work I'm doing on myself. That's why I reached out, because it was like, this is a part of it. This is a part of, like, we can, like, I've downloaded podcasts. I've spoke to people because I'd rather get it from the horse's mouth. I don't know if this is a joke or anything, but I felt bad, right, listening to a BBC podcast about Black history. I don't know. I don't know if I was like, oh, the BBC's British. I mean, come on, there's going to be some kind of skewed there. I'd rather listen to something from someone that's in the community rather than something that was from our side of the pond. It didn't make sense. It was like, okay, I've got to think about where I get my sources from, and the BBC, bro, it's a weird thing. I'm like, no, if I'm gonna commit to it, I'm gonna have to get it from the right places. I can't just read or watch a documentary and go, well, that's the way it is.
Listen to me, sweetie, but that's information. How are you going to implement the power of your dollar? Because like you said before, you may not be a bad person, but that doesn't mean other people aren't bad people. In the past, you're guilty of not being intentional about putting your money with Black business. And so you can only respond for you, and you can be the change you want to see. And while you may not, I'm not asking you to say, okay, August, I'm gonna sign up for your coaching program or something like that now, but I know you're speaking on, you're stuck with this thing of you're speaking for yourself and for your race. But this is a question that's directed directly at you. So hold that thought for a second, because other people have some things, but I want you to be thinking about, how do you change the power of your money? Where do you spend your money? How do you intentionally say, you know what? I'm buying the shirt from over here, the shoes from over there, the cleaning products from over there, the learning tools for business over there. You wanted solutions to how you help us navigate this issue. And we many of us, you talking about white privilege, both of us can go for a job, and because his name is Tyrone is, all his resume is thrown to the side because of his name. Yours is not, because Michael McDonald, that one right there could be, but now that's probably white. But I'm guilty of it. People have called for Mr. August Crenshaw. A lot of people don't understand that August is a white masculine name. So when they were calling for August, they thought that they were calling for a white male, and even under my maiden name. So there's a lot of things that have crossed my path. And I learned this at a very young age. Just because my name is August, and with the E on it only added extra, my mother had no idea what the fuck she was doing, but that made it French. So that was even more so to my privilege, at least initially, until they got a chance to see that I was Black. So I want you to think about that, and that's something you may have to think about later. But Imani has something to say first, and then it goes over to Teresa.
Hey, ladies. Hey, Mike. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Actually, because we talked yesterday, so you actually asked the question I was going to ask independently, and I'm really glad that you reiterated on moving out of the conceptual into the actual, right? Because I hear a lot of conceptual now, which is great to talk about that as well. But what I will do then is, my initial thought is I wanted to piggyback off of what Camille was saying. So in addition to when you answer August's question about what does it look to intentionally spend your dollars with, Black business and supporting Black businesses and investing in that with green, and not just saying if I wanted it, I would buy it, but that right now, but right now, we're in a space where that is part of advancing the movement. That is part of the Revolutionary Act, to put your money into these spaces intentionally, whether you want it or not, whether you need it or not, to donate, to, you know, to buy it and give it as gifts, whatever. But the question that I had to come out of the concept for Camise was, you know, how do we get our stories out there as truth? And we tell our stories and we own it, but you have a platform, right? So how do you use the platform that, or will you, or do you intend to, or what questions do you have about using your platform to do what Camille was saying, which is to share the lion's voice, to share the stories that aren't being told, especially in your community? So that would be my question, to kind of move out of the conceptual into the how for that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention sort of the charity side, because I know that, if I remember, August did mention it was more like investing in the community, and I thought, okay, buying stuff is based on whether I would use it, buy it, use it, invest in it, that's okay. But the charity side, that is something I can relate to. That's something I can do. I can do that, as you said, whether I want it or not, whether I get something back or not. That is something that I can do, and something that I would encourage everybody else to do as well. Because again, like, whether it's, you know, if 100 people invest 100, that's better than me investing 3 and thinking I'm doing better, right? So trying to encourage more people to do it is something that, again, it's one of those things where it shouldn't be a questionable thing. It should be something that people do. And I've got friends that have, I know I've invested in trying to, because one of the things that I didn't know was what it was really like, which is why I wanted to talk to you in the first place. Because when you try to understand it, I want to try and understand it from different perspectives. I mean, you mentioned, you know, I've got a platform, how can I use it? You know, not just now, because while we're talking, while it's happening, it's quite close to home right now, right? And everyone's like, yeah, we'll organize it, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll change everything, it'll all work out great. But I had a bit of a crisis of not confidence. I didn't really hate humans at one point because, you know, the president's locked himself in the White House, and what I've seen on social media, everything's falling apart. And so I just thought, there's no hope. The brain sort of went to, like, what on earth's happening? What on earth? The whole world's falling apart, and we've got the virus, we've got everything happening, and the head just went, what can we do? But as you said, you know, you can donate, you can give your time, which we're doing now. It is an issue when everyone is going to sit round and go, well, it's all well and good doing it now because it's fresh in people's minds. It's all well and good doing it now because it's relevant. And, you know, everyone's sort of saying, like, with the Black Lives Matter thing, because unfortunately I did find Twitter and it drove me insane. They were all like, all lives matters, and that's not the point. It's not the point, because we're up here, you're down here, and you shouldn't be. We've got to bring you guys up. That's the point. It's not about, because everyone is supposed to matter, but right now they don't. To everybody, right? To everybody, to the collective. Right now, it's not that way. And in order to bring you guys up, you need the attention, you need the platforms, you need to have your voice told. And even if it just happens now, for me, because again, I was like, the whole world's falling to pieces. I don't want this to be forgotten. And, you know, next year, we've got to be making progress next month. And I know we're start of this month. So this month, we want to be making progress. I had to check the date there. So the problem that you will probably have, and I'm sure you have had, is it has to be consistent. You have to have this sense of, you shouldn't have to ask for permission. You shouldn't have to force it. You shouldn't have to do any of those things. It should just be like part of the daily life. Or as August said, you know, she spoke at my events, she's done all those sorts of things. I didn't sit there when I was planning my events or my podcast, for instance, and go, I want to make sure I have a Black person on the panel. That wasn't running through my head. I didn't have the whole tick in the box thing. I don't have that. I go, okay, I'm doing an event on this, this, and this. August is awesome. I'll have her on. It wasn't like, okay, I've got a box to tick, and the one of them, ooh, diversity. I know August is Black. I'll see it. That didn't happen. That didn't run through my head.
Which is
But
great, but
this is something
unfortunately,
that I
that's
think
what
is
does
worth
happen.
mentioning as well. It's worth mentioning because I know that there's like, if I make a little bit of an effort, you might be like, oh, here we go, he's just ticking a box. This is why I think it needs to be consistent. It needs to be something that's just part and parcel of doing whatever it is that we do. It shouldn't have to be a box that we tick. It shouldn't have to be that because
Mike, I love you, and I know that right now you're passionate. I love you, but I am going to ask you to be succinct because you kind of begin to go off tangents, even though it's all connected. And we want to make sure that we keep the conversations actual, practical, right now, not theoretical, not conceptual. And that is true. And I've never felt that from you. If I felt that I was your one token candidate, I would have never participated in your events. I don't want Teresa to lose her thought. She did type it in the comments, and I want her to just add a little bit more because at the end of the day, you did address it to a degree, but I don't even think you realize, and I challenge you to go back and watch this interview and listen to yourself, how you don't really hone and hammer in on the money conversation. And I'm also going to come back and I'm going to challenge your thought when it comes to the ideal of needing to understand. But before I go there, Teresa, I want you to come in and really explain to him, because this is going to really address even more the power of the dollar and why we keep on emphasizing the money.
Yeah, so my background is corporate. I worked for a major corporation for about 13 years. And one of the things that I see happen there that doesn't happen in our entrepreneurial pursuits is the idea of supplier diversity. So this is, kind of going back to the point that Imani had, but also with you, it's, like August is saying, where are you going to spend your money? It's not just about you having the option. Like one of the things that you said was, oh, well, I could buy something and I could buy it even if I don't need it. What about the things that you do need? So if not just that you have the option to buy from a Black person, but that you make the intention to purchase it from a Black person. Because I can think of, if you're hosting an event, I mean, I know somebody right now that can do video, that can do photo, that can do, he has drones, he can do all the good, wave your hands, group photos for your events, all that kind of stuff that you want to do. Black man, excellent personal character. There's no reason that you couldn't say that you want to be intentional about this. And for every purchase decision that you have to make, you explore other options, right? So, I mean, how many of those purchases are you the decision maker on? It's so much easier than it is in corporate. It's so much easier than it is in the military. It's so much easier than it is in all these other structures, and they're able to do it and y'all aren't doing it. I had a conversation with another coach. Well, she's a consultant more of coaches. And one of the things that she was saying is, I can understand at certain levels for certain things, you may not feel that there are options. It may just be that option is not visible because you're not looking in the right place. You're not asking anybody else. You're not making the intention and the effort to go and to get it. And, diversity is great, but you have to be very specific. You have to be very specific, because what I also saw in this corporate organization was that they said, hey, we're global and we appreciate diversity and inclusion, but we've got to think about these other countries that have national, national agendas. Every place is different. Not every place is like the United States. And so as opposed to thinking about it from a standpoint of, what are the needs of all these different cultures and races to help them, to all come up, they just wanted to say, well, we just want to include everybody. And I mean, it got so watered down. You probably ain't had it, but I'll tell the rest of the ladies here, it was worse than that government powdered milk. It was so watered down. it was so horrible. And a lot of those programs are now like barely limping along. And so if there's not an intention there, if you don't have boxes on your planning sheet, you got a box for how many emails you're going to send. You got a box for when you're going to make a price break for your tickets. You have a box for, what are the things that you want to get from the host location. But do you have a box in terms of you being intentional about bringing in Black resources?
Yeah, I mean, again, this comes back to the difference between like sort of saying you're going to do it and then do it, right? A lot of people are talking about it. They've got the boxes to tick, but as you said, it's about being intentional with it, making it real, making it noticeable. Because sometimes it just goes on behind the scenes, and you may not see it. I'm not saying that's true. It may or may not be true. But one of the things that I know you're aware of is it's the intentional side of it that you guys want. It's the intentional side. It's not about like saying you've got a box for it and that's going to please people, because it won't. I know in my talks with August in the past, she's very straight down the line. She'll say it how it is. If I was to say, oh, well, I've made progress, August, I've got a box for this and I've got an intention for that, she'll go, okay, but have you done it? One of the things that I like about having people like August, and it's not just August, by the way, it's loads of other people as well, is she's pretty good at calling me out on stuff like that. She's pretty good at doing those things, which means or meant that years ago when we started, one of the brands that I currently co-own was, we've got I'm trying to think of the right word. We've got meetups in different places, right? And when people apply, because I know where August brought up the job interview, when people apply, obviously they give their name, where they are, all those things, right? Now, one of the best things about it is we actually want these meetups in different places. So we've got you sort of nip it in the bud a little bit before we have to turn around and say, no, we don't want somewhere from this place. We don't have that. So is it intentional? Is it about the money side? I do think it is, because money is a big motivator. Money is something that you spend on based on your priorities, right? And you've got to prioritize certain things. You mentioned is it visible, and is it not visible just because you're not looking in the right places? Now that's a very interesting comment that you made, because I think although I may not do it as intensely, a little button goes in my brain that says, well, I might not like that white person because their work's not very good or it isn't what I want. Same thing with the others, but, and this is the work I'm doing. This is what I'm trying to understand myself and how I've operated, how I've worked, how I've gone about it, and it's not been right, is that it may happen more than it should. Where I've gone in and I've gone, I like their work more because of who's done it. Right? Because of who the person is, what they look like, whether they, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Whatever sort of builds their reputation, right? I would lie if I said that didn't happen at all. Like, ever. I've never gone in and gone, they look unprofessional, I'm going to go with this one over here. Now, that's wrong, right? I'll admit that. I was wrong. It wasn't a good thing to do. And we are making strides. We even made strides before this, because obviously with the way the world is right now, is we want to be inclusive anyway. But steps like not, I mean, we don't discriminate with the meetups anyway, but even like staffing, who do we hire? Who do we bring on? Does that matter? Of course it does. Are we going to really base it on how they look? No. But the truth is there's a difference between what we say, what we try and do, and then there's that sort of as a next level. I can't explain it. There's like an assumption or a judgment built in that is after, like, we're going to try to make a difference. We're going to not say yes to people just because of their skin color either, which works both ways. Again, you don't want the misplaced effort either. You don't want people to just go through the motions with it and hope, people are doing it just because. That's not right either, which you said before. So with that is something that it's not about making an effort, is it? It's about making more of an effort. It's about being more intentional with it. It's about, if you're at like 7 out of 10 effort, take it up to an 8.5 or a 9. Take it up to a 10 if you have to. And for myself, I tend to do that anyway. I look at what their work's like, what their output's like. Have they got a high turnaround time? Then I look and go, okay, what are their reviews and all those things? So I think that is something that people need to do a bit more of, like maybe like based on their work, based on their results, based on what they can do, rather than just who they are. And I'm making a more conscious effort to do that. It's happening. It's not like past tense. It's happening now, not future tense. It's happening now. And this is part of the reason why I wanted you guys to talk to my community as well, to go off that, to not use their profile picture to determine whether to hire someone or not, because that's not right. That's not fair. It's not something that should happen. And yeah, I don't know what much else to say.
You're good. I'm gonna let you. I'm not gonna necessarily respond directly to that because I know that Camille wants it. But remember, I said I wanted to say something else. So,
yeah, sure.
And I did go ahead and stream this on Facebook too. I mean, for people that go back and watch the replay. But here's something else that I want you to consider, and especially since you're saying that you want to understand how to be a little bit more cautious and sensitive with your language. The concept and the idea that white people need to get a better understanding, you said that quite a bit. You need to realize that we don't have time for you to understand, because you should already understand. Now, on one hand, we talked about white privilege and all that stuff and how there's some new things that you're figuring out, but I want you to think about something. You see, a lot of this work, there's also a lot of personal work. We talk about personal development that you all need to do. And what I need you to understand is that a white person does not have to understand how someone treats a dog badly. Oh my God, was Mike Vick doing what he was doing with dogs? Fine him millions of dollars and put his black ass in jail. You guys will go out there and you will create little doggy shelters and you will run campaigns. You will stand behind abuse and be deliberate and intentional and make sure that you take care of quote unquote causes that you believe in. And so when we are abused and mutilated and mistreated worse than dogs, and we already know that dogs are valued above Black life, you do have to understand, we don't have time for you to understand every single microscopic detail. The point is, when you see a dog being abused or on the street, y'all run y'all asses out there and you pick it up and you do what you got to do. You've seen us dying, you've seen us suffocating, you've seen us shot. And maybe you haven't seen it all. How many people saw the video when Fidel Castillo, when the mama and the daughter were in the back of the car and the mama was crying and the girl couldn't have been no more than like 3 years old, saying, "Mama, please stop crying, stop cussing, because I don't want you to get shot. I wish this place was safer." Why does a child that young have the ability to ascertain and discern the level of fucking danger And your people are still fucking struggling with it. This is where that hostility and that animosity comes with Black people. See, we don't want you to understand. We want you to just fucking acknowledge. Because you don't understand Hitler, crazy ass. Did you guys understand Hitler? You don't understand Hitler, but you know the Holocaust was fucking bad. So we don't need you to understand. We need you to acknowledge, and we need y'all to fucking act. That's number one. Number two, when Imani said what she was saying, and I know that you didn't necessarily mean this, but if you're gonna get help with what you're doing, you gotta watch your words. And I'm on people about words and mindsets and what I do with coaching. We ain't looking for no fucking charity. Saying that, when I think about it from that perspective, I can get some charity, and even if I don't want it, I can buy it. No, we're not telling y'all to frivolously spend your money. We're not telling you all to just throw caution to the wind. We believe in financial acuity and being responsible with our funds, but we are saying making an intentional effort. And you have to make a decision. Like Teresa was saying, you know what, if I'm going to host an event and I need a photographer, I have to realize that subconsciously my mind automatically looks for Bob. I got to go and look for Tyrone. If I'm going to need someone to do my graphics or do my Facebook ads, why do I have to go to try to find Russell Brunson? Let me go to Marquise, and I'm talking about a real brother's name that's connected to Brother Bedford, who will blow your mind with his Facebook ad strategy. I'm going to go and I'm going to go spend money with him. It's about intentionality. Now, is charity and contribution something that's also good? Absolutely. But to have the mindset of charity, that goes into that white privilege bullshit. I have it, let me do. So please understand, this is not what we're saying to you. And I want to challenge you for the rest of this conversation. While I know that you're also trying to speak because you want to help your counterparts, I want more I want more me, not we, not theory, not what you see, what some people could do, what some people do, and you put some eyes in it. But the challenge is for you. See, right now, whether you realize it or not, I'm gonna differentiate you between the NFL and Ben and Jerry. The NFL, who happened to, we know what they did with Colin Kaepernick. Now, all of a sudden, oh my God, we just want you to know that the NFL is not about, just, frivolously going out there and charging Black people with crimes and murdering them. That's not good. Ben and Jerry's like, we ain't never been for racism. The white supremacist system got to go down. And if y'all for it, you can't be here. We ain't messing with you. One of them is saying, fuck the system. The other one is saying, let me make sure I say something so I can still get the Black dollar. This society moves with power. Power moves with money. And so what it looks like, and that's the other thing, you want to throw a hell of a, for instance, you could host an event. If you have a bunch of entrepreneurs who can't sell worth shit, and I'm a beast at it, you throw a conference and you say, well, August, what you charging? What you need? You need $1,500 a pop? Because you know that's what the going rate is. You come to me and say, I got people with a cover charge of $1,500 a pop. You don't come to me and be like, because this is what white people do. Well, August is real good at it. Well, let's see if she'll do it for $500 a pop. She probably, and subconsciously, because you're thinking I ain't never made $500 a pop. And instead of you go, because this is how your system is, and this is what has been ingrained into your subconscious. And an unfortunate thing that you have to realize is that if you make that level of decision, when you've done products in the past and 50 people have bought, you're going to be like, why the fuck did only 3 people buy this product? So that you can recognize that some of the people that you are around do not have the same agenda as you. And then you begin to disassociate yourself from shit like that. See, this right here, what you asked to engage in, this is not a one-trick pony thing. This is not I do something for a couple of months type of thing. Mike, we're talking about a whole fucking lifestyle change. We're talking about from now until the day that you die, because there is no way that 1 month, 1 week, 1 year, not even a fucking decade is going to reverse the centuries of shit that we have to overcome. And so when your white counterparts listen to people like me and other individuals and say, I want to be a part of the movement, you have to dedicate yourself to a lifestyle change. And so more I statements, me, this is what I'm going to do. Say it plain, own up to your shit. Don't even put flattery terms around it. I'm fucking guilty. This is what I did wrong. This is what I've done good. This is what I can do better. And stay away, because you cannot speak on behalf of your people, because unfortunately the vast majority of your people is what got us in this situation in the first place. And so that's the challenge that I want to put out there. Like I said, we only have so much time, and I want you to encourage you to go back to the replay so that you can really hear the questions. You can also listen to your responses and then mentally see what's going on, because you sound like you're in this place where you want to be introspective, but it's going to require that. So I don't necessarily even want you to respond to that right now, because that's kind of like me wrapping everything up together. I know Camille wanted to bring up another point because something that you said triggered that. So let's see what Camille's statement and question is, and then let's keep this rolling. And at any point, if anybody needs to leave, and even you, Mike, because we haven't given a time frame, put it in the in the comments if you only have 15, 30 minutes or whatever. But I am open to stay on here for an extended period of time. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you, Camille.
One of the things that I think is really important is to be able to name the method of explanation that you're providing. And I know, like August was saying, subconscious and this, that, and other. I'm going to give it the actual name: unconscious bias, implicit bias. That's what's happening in this conversation. And it's important that you use those words too, because unconscious bias and implicit bias is exactly what August says. It's introspection. When words kind of come out unintentionally, you might not have intended charity to be the word that you wanted to use, but that is a manifestation of unconscious bias. When you say things like, well, I guess I need to check off a box, or I need to determine whether or not they're qualified. Like, these things are implicit bias. Like being able to say something like, well, if I go to their reviews and read what the reviews say, I'm going to tell you right now, like, Black businesses get under reviewed a lot. So the reviews ain't gonna help you know whether or not they're good. So you've got to be able to understand, okay, I'm looking at this. Can I give a critical eye that will start to alleviate some of those implicit and unconscious biases that are there, so that I know that what I'm looking at is the quality of the person and not the quality of the review. That I'm looking at the quality of the work and not necessarily what I think is the quality of the work. Because I'm going to be honest with you. I train white people in this a lot, and white people bring piss poor work all the time, and they still give each other work, while Black people are doing 200, 300, 500% more in order to prove that they're worthy to even sit at the table. Right now, we're like, forget it. We're just going to build our own table because we're tired. We're tired. And at this point, in all transparency, if I begin to have white people reaching out to me to ask me to do certain things when I've been doing this for 20 years and you haven't called me, my first question is, why now? Why now? Why now? And I would want to hear that. And what I don't want to hear is a roundabout explanation of trying to expand and broaden. I want to hear, no, I know that I have ignored you for 20 years and you've been doing the damn thing, so that's why I'm bringing you on now. Versus, we're trying to expand. Diversity is a title. Diversity is a title. It's not real. It's not real. And this, as a diversity trainer, diversity is not real. Intentionality is what we're looking for. Intentionality and inclusiveness is what we're looking for. And that intentionality is not something that you talk about. It's something that you do. Just like, we have universities that tout all the time, we're committed to diversity. All right. How many Black faculty do you have on your campus right now that are tenured? If you can't answer that question, no, you're not. So being able to really understand where that unconscious implicit bias falls within you is going to be important, because that's how stuff changes. It doesn't change by kind of talking around it. It doesn't change by kind of not acknowledging. You have to say, this is where my implicit bias is. This is where my unconscious bias is. And this is where I'm committed to changing it. That's really important in terms of being able to model the behaviors that we need folks to do in order for these changes to happen.
Yeah, that does make perfect sense in terms of what you were saying there, because it is unconscious. It is a bias. It is something that I mentioned that I was guilty of it before. The whole childish element, I brought that up. I think it was mentioned in the question because it was different from what August mentioned previously. So I just sort of, it isn't something that, again, it's the intentional. It's about going from, like, I don't know, let's say your conscious intention behind it was like 5 out of 10. And you realize that. I realized it's probably about 7. It was about 7 out of 10. In terms of making a conscious effort to, because again, diversity isn't real, as you said. So it's not about being diverse for the sake of it. It's about going to the different people, right? To see what they're like, see what they can do, see what they can get, just see what value they bring, right? And the thing that you mentioned about, Black people having the lower reviews and white people being given work even though it's awful. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't realize that that's what was going on. Yeah, I'll hold my hand up that I didn't realize that that's what was happening. I didn't realize that the Black people were given bad reviews, because reviews are a part of how you pick, and the fact that that's going on, again, as I meant, right, throughout this, it's not good. What's going on is horrible, right? There's no doubt about it. And again, I wasn't aware of that. That's not something I was aware of. So I can only apologize. I can only say that I'm sorry that I base it off that, and then behind the scenes, that goes on, right? I didn't know. So yeah, it is about looking at the work and the person versus just the reviews. Because while it's nice to have the reviews, to know that it's not really real is the only way I can put it. It's not a real indication of the work, right? It's not like black and white. They got low reviews, therefore it's bad. Kind of where I'm going with this. That's not true. They could be amazing, but because of their skin color, they are given those reviews. And yeah, that's something that I will have to look into. I'll have to make that shift in myself. Because again, it's not about saying that I will do stuff. It's about doing it. So that is something that we're doing. In case some people do have to dart, what we are doing, I say we because it is a company, so it's not just me. It's not just going to be me that's doing it. We are bringing on, again, it's about intentional. I know it's going to be a bit weird because it'll come across like we're doing it just because of what's going on. But as August said, it's about a lifestyle change. It's about a lifestyle choice. It's about making a conscious effort to do it. And again, I'm cynical of myself when I say it, because the back of my mind is like, no, I don't want it to be that way. I don't want it to be a one-off. I don't want it to be like I'm just one guy trying to do what he can. We are looking for Black people to join the companies, more of them. We're looking for that. That's what we're doing. That's what we're making a conscious effort to do. So while I have made mistakes, as you mentioned, it's unconscious. So it's based on, I know, biases, what we're exposed to. Confirmation bias is about keeping things the same. Cognitive dissonance is about not being open to change. So I'm guilty of it. I imagine there's a lot of others that are guilty of it as well. And again, just on August's point of being a bit more specific, a bit more focused with my answers, what I'm trying to do is that, yeah, I am aware that I've been guilty of it. I am aware that that's what's been happening. I'm aware that I am also aware of the stuff that I'm changing. It's gonna, it won't happen straight away in terms of you guys seeing it, but know that it's happening behind the scenes. Like, we're talking to people, we're having interviews, we're bringing people on, we're seeing what they've got, what they offer, right? It could be amazing, as you mentioned, like reviews on everything, right? References on everything, opinions on everything, because opinions are skewed as well, as you said. So I think that a big part of it, moving forwards anyway, so as of having this highlighted to me, that's one of the reasons why I decided to do it, was because there's a lot that goes on that I don't know is happening. You know, like the thing that you mentioned there, and that's the only way of describing it is that's horrible, that's not right, that's not ethical for a start, right? So yeah, now I know that, we're going to base it on what they can do. We're going to bring them on, we're going to see what they've got. If they're amazing, they're amazing. That's what it's going to boil down to. And I suppose in some ways I've also been guilty of being good in some areas and then not good in others, you know, and thinking that I'm trying to do the right thing. You know, I say trying, but trying to do the right thing now, more right. Trying to think of the right, more right than what it used to be. But there's a difference between thinking you're doing the right thing, even though you're fully aware that we're not, I'm not, right? And turning around and saying, right, now I know that things have to change. Things will change, you know? And yeah, that stumped me a bit because I didn't realize that was happening. So I didn't realize that. Yeah, I completely take my hat off to people that have to live with that as well. Like, you do amazing work and then, oh, why is it only 3 stars? Why is it only 3 stars? It was amazing. You loved it. You told me you loved it. And then there's a 3-star review instead of like 4.5 or 5, even though you told me that you loved it. So I imagine you had to experience that as well. You know, the whole like positive feedback all works out really well. And then from the outside looking in, you don't get the acknowledgement for it. You don't get the benefit of it. So yeah, I can only apologize for that. I'm sorry that that's something that you guys have to deal with.
Yeah, and I don't want you to take that. You know, it's unfortunate, and Imani, I saw your hand up. It's unfortunate that you don't even realize how easy it is for you to take a comment, you know, out of context. We're not saying that we're victims of malicious reviews. As a matter of fact, there are plenty. I mean, I'm one of those people. All you got to do is go to my website. I got a shit ton of videos of plenty of people that scream my praises. You know, I've been spammed by some white people that have given me a 1-star that I don't know who the hell they are, so I assume they just a racist bastard.
It's across the board, I imagine. Yeah.
And Facebook's policy says that it cannot be removed, but that's a whole nother other story. But we're not saying that we're victims of malicious reviews. What we're saying is don't go the petty route to qualify us. What we're saying is do what you do with anything else. See, this whole participating in the movement is no different than building a business. And I'm not going to say that much. I'm going to save this, my comment, for the closeout. But I do want to at least just add this part. People buy from those they who know, like, and trust. And if you ain't getting to know us and you don't like us, then you can't trust us and you won't spend with us. And so that's all we're saying. It's about encouraging the dialogue. It's about building the relationship. And at the end of the day, you and I both know that you don't work with people that are white just because of their reviews. And I will even say this in your defense. I mean, even with me, you might did look at my reviews, but you saw some shit on IG that was like, oh my God, look at this chick's page. And we had conversations and you liked the authenticity and you reached out about the podcast. So we're just not about giving white people any leeway for having an excuse for not making more conscious decisions about spending with us or doing anything. We're not victims of malicious attacks. As a matter of fact, there's plenty of us with damn good reviews. I know you got to go, Kami. And so I'm going to stop that there. I want Imani, you said something, I saw her hand go up, so that triggered a thought for her.
Sure.
But just so you know, I wanted to emphasize that. So let's not beat on a dead horse or a non-relevant issue. Go ahead, Imani.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that this is helpful. What I'm going to say is helpful for the back and forth that I hear you going through in terms of your intention, and then like, but what if it's viewed this way? I don't want to tick this box. I don't want to do this. I would say continue to check in with your intention, because sometimes walking on eggshells to not seem like it's this way actually causes the issue. Meaning, if your intention is actually to be, and I'm making an assumption because I know it was a little late, allyship, okay, around this issue and the shift in lifestyle, that means doing something that other folks, especially other white folks, are not doing, or at least that I'm not seeing, and really stepping into a certain place. I'm going to be specific because we're talking about the money issue. When I view it, right, you said you're a 7 out of 10. I'm not sure where the confidence in that number is and what it is that you're doing in terms of inclusivity, but sounds like you feel confident in that. But oftentimes we see, white folks with businesses that have a sprinkle of us, or a sprinkle of us that they, are ready to put their money into. But what we don't see, which to me would be an indication of someone who's really stepping in, is saying, there's probably going to be a sprinkle of white people here, and I'm going to make sure that I'm looking at Black candidates, taking the time and energy to know, like, and trust, taking the time and energy to find the best ones that I like in these candidates specifically. I'm not even, and this is the part that's really counterintuitive perhaps, is I'm not looking at these white candidates right now, because right now, what I know is needed in allyship is to put money in supporting Black businesses and Black folk and suppliers, like Teresa was saying, who need this. So being a white person who is in a position of ownership or co-ownership of a business, who's taking the position that many Black people are taking themselves of, I am putting my money into Black businesses and Black people. So I'm gonna actually do my energy and have the interviews and all of that with this pool of Black people, specifically as my way of pouring into this particular time and beyond, because I know this is what needed to. You talked about this scale right here. I know this is what's needed for that. And so that seems, different, because what it would look like optically is now I have a whole, I'm putting all my money into Black people on this sprinkle of white people, but the opposite is what we always see. And so the shift is going to be drastic. But to me, now we're in the 7 out of 10. Now we're getting there. Anything else, I'm like, it just seems regular. White person saying, oh, we're interviewing Black people, white people. We'll see who's the best candidate. The revolution and the shift that's happening now is more than that. And I hope that I'm being clear about that.
And I want to add, wait, 1 second, Mike, I want to add something to that. And I'm pretty certain that Imani was clear, but y'all know I kind of put that rough, raw edge on it, is that the bottom line is that when white people grade themselves, you grade yourself so fucking generously. And that when you grade Black people, you grade Black people harshly. And this may sound a little far-fetched, but I want to make sure that we understand. There's a silly ass millennial named Tommy Lauren that I came across years ago. And she decided that she always has something to say. She called Black Panthers worse than the KKK. She's a really ditzy ass white blonde. But anyway, and that's just being real. She is pro-racist. She's not a Trump supporter. I think in another life she was his grandmother. You know what I'm saying? Great grandmother. She reincarnated, because this woman is off the fucking chain, and she's so young and so impressioned. But anyway, she actually responded. I said, I haven't went and saw one of her videos because I don't entertain her, because the shit will actually make me go around want to kill all white people. That's just how awful she is. I'm gonna make sure I'm putting a very colorful picture up here. But she decided to speak on George Floyd. And if you were stupid, you would think that for once, she actually gave a fuck about Black people. She was like, what that man did and how he killed George Floyd was just absolutely horrific. He was wrong. And then this is where she does the switch. Those are bad apples in a great sector of police officers that are here to protect and serve. They're making the good apples just really struggle with being able to get out there and do their job. She wasn't even focused on the unjust murder of this man. And so you will say that those are a few bad apples in a corrupt system that's been killing us. But if she were to do a video on a Black man that robbed a bank, she'd be like, see, that's what's wrong with Black people. Those niggas just rob banks. We get thrown and lumped into scenarios. And so when white people look at themselves, you have a tendency to not really look at a clear lens. And you're saying, yeah, if I'm about a 7, and honest to goodness truth, Mike, if you're just now developing consciousness about this, there's no way in the world you could be a 7. Where you can say, I've had August do collaborations with me, and I didn't even have racial bias or thoughts of diversity, inclusion. She just was a cool Black woman. I wasn't even thinking about a Black woman. I'm just like, hey, I'm having an event. She qualified. I wanted to be there. While on one hand, you could pat yourself on the back that there was no manipulation or scheming behind it. When you really go back and listen to everything and you look at how you move and you operate, even within your business or your company and hiring Black people, that you're lucky if you were even a 3. But you have to do that. You have to look at it. You have to have a real talk with yourself and say, man, I don't even know if I'm on the scale. I'm on a -1. And maybe because I decided to have a courageous conversation, now I need to get to a 1. And so I know somebody else may have a question, but I want to say this. Being a part of this movement is no different than being in a business. It's no different than having the epiphany that I'm not working for anybody anymore because these motherfuckers don't care about me. I need to create my life, make my own money, and live life on my terms. When that decision comes into play, then the sacrifices and the games begin. You begin to not think like your employed friends. You start reading different books, entertaining different things, investing money in different ways, going to different workshops, not going on the trips, not spending money there, but spending money here. You cry sometimes at night because everything you're doing doesn't seem like it's working or making an impact. You get these silent cheers because you finally got a sale. You realize you kind of fudged up and you got to go back to the plain book and you got to redirect and do something over again. And sometimes you struggle for the first couple of years to even think that you've made a profit. Your mind has to be so made up once you decide to become an entrepreneur that it doesn't make a difference how dark it looks. You know that you're in your zone of genius. You know what you're at your point of purpose. You have definiteness of intentions and you refuse to fucking turn back. And you will get there by any means necessary. You will work a piece of shit job that you hate if you know that it's going to fund building your business. You begin to lose people in your sphere of influence and your friends because you don't talk like them and you don't think like them anymore. And all of that to say that this is exactly what it looks like, deciding that you want to be a part of the movement to make sure that, as far as it says in the United States over here in the Constitution, that everybody's got the right to have, life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. I mean, the Declaration. You know what I'm saying? If that's what you really want to happen. And so right now, and me and a sister had this exchange, you decided to step up to the plate and have the courageous conversation. I applaud you for that. And right now, you're in a little bit of limbo and you're really trying to figure this out. But I want you to recognize right now, you're going to have to really ask yourself, am I cut out for this? Because just like entrepreneurship, you've got to have the heart of a fucking lion to be on this. Because when you really, really state what you're doing, because see, the other people that you're talking about working with, they may have more of a diversity and inclusion mentality. You may be borderline on the no, we're going to do this shit right mentality. And they're going to be like, whoa, guy, come on now. We're making sure we're getting some of them a job. And then it's like, okay, hold up. We hired, 2 out of the 10 positions are Black people or people of color, matter of fact, you'd be like, well, really, one of them's Black and the other one's, but I mean, still, we're including people. And then you want it to be 6 out of 10? Baby, you're going to lose friends. You're going to lose alliances. This is why white people can't get allyship given to them right away, because as soon as you start losing the allies you got, then we see whether or not your faith in your relationship with us is that strong. See, the only time white people got faith in Black people is when they know that they created Jordans or something like that because they know they can get our dollars. The Bob Proctors and the Marie Forleos, they know that the Black people will spend their money, but they ain't gonna let you say shit about no Black Lives Matter. And so what makes you any different than them? White people been taking our dollars, white people been taking our time, and they've been the vast majority. If you want to flip this system over on its head, then you flip that shit and you make sure that now we become the majority. And that's some scary shit, because white people are already afraid that they losing their touch, because they are literally in the numbers game, are playing the game of dealing with extinction. So doing this means that you got to ask yourself, do I still, and you talk about this all the time, I know about your physical challenges, the illnesses, the ailments that you overcame to be an entrepreneur and to push no matter what. Do you have that same level of fortitude and tenacity towards making sure that this happens? Not just realizing that it's a lifestyle change, but realizing that you're going to have to deal with some heartbreak. You're going to have to deal with some loss. And you're going to realize more than you want to that even though plenty of people are having the conversations, they don't want to make the moves, because you come from a race of people. That's what we've been doing. We've been conversing. Black Lives Matter movement, that ain't nothing but a bunch of white people who conversed and said, how do we penetrate this whole thing with what Black people originally started with Black Lives Matter movement? You need to understand. Ask why there's no logo. Ask why there's no picture of the board on the Black Lives Matter movement. That's because white people are funding this shit, and their agenda is not for Black people. When you want to do your homework, you go read the What We Believe page. And when you get past all of that fluff about Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman and all of that shit, you look at how they talking about transgender, Black women's rights, children's rights. That page ain't even speaking about the rights that they want to see for Black men. Your eyes are going to have to be wide open. You're going to have to feel some pain, and you're going to have to face some realities that you've never faced before, and be prepared to lose. Because see, people want to get in the war, people want to fight, but they don't realize it's always darkest before the dawn. We ain't nowhere near the dawn. We just barely fucking getting started. That's the closing thoughts that I want to leave you with. And I know I said a shit ton, but like I said, I'm hoping you go back and you go watch this video. But I love you, brother, but you're grading yourself too high. But you can have it.
Yeah, I definitely respect that. I think there's a difference between, as I said, you know, some areas I'm doing okay at, other areas I'm shocking at compared to the standard that I should be at. So I'm aware that that's like 7 is kind of like different areas. But one of the things that sort of made me stop and realize like what it's going to take is, you mentioned that the Black Lives Matter movement is funded by us lot, right? I say us lot with in the harshest way. That made me think. So I'm gonna have to have a bit of a long lie down after this talk. I'm gonna get that out right now. Lie down and go, ugh, head melted. But with that, with the lifestyle change, I mean, do I think I can do it? Yeah. I mean, losing friends that don't have the same interests as me and beliefs as me, I've done that before. Am I prepared to do it again? Definitely. I'm okay to do that if the benefit is bigger, right? Losing a friend is inconclusive if it means that you lot benefit, right? As a whole, as a person, whatever it is, right? I'm prepared to do the extra mile, 10,000 miles, whatever it takes, right? With the Black Lives Matter side, that has hit me quite a bit. The fact that even the whole movement could be like secretly funded by white people, and let's just give them enough to make them feel satisfied, and then we'll just go back to the way things were. That's when I actually sat there and just thought, that's the thing that made me want to message you. That's the thing that made me think there's something has to happen. I can't sit by and watch like that. I didn't even realize it was that bad. You know, the movement that's supposed to be in favor of you,
but did you
secretly having a different agenda?
Let me just give you a couple of things to look up. First of all, if they are in tune with and in the background, they know everywhere we're going to protest. Protesters are protesting. If vandalists are vandalizing, looters are looting, But I want you to realize that wherever there are protests, you can even see video footage where they're going and laying bricks down. They are deliberately, causing fights within the protesters. They've even gotten white cops on video busting out windows to make it look like, and there's a white guy, he actually got busted because somebody got him on video and his picture was on, he was a police officer. So they're actually going in and provoking riots, they're setting things on fire, they're doing stuff like that. And the reason why they know is because everybody's going around Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, but everything is being funneled through their stuff. So if they know where we're moving, then they know how to strategically jump in there and then make it look like we're causing mass chaos.
Yeah.
But we actually are not. So people are saying, why are Black people burning down their own communities and destroying shit? And it's like, no, white people are making, they're in the background, they're doing stuff like that. And so we're not saying that Black lives don't matter, because they actually do matter, but we're just saying that, and this is why we don't want charity. We don't want charity from anybody, because see, when white people give charity, then white people want to then try to dictate what goes down, or they get inside and they have their hidden agendas and they do extra stuff. And so, just you don't, I wouldn't spend too much time on too much research, because at the end of the day, you just got to take the necessary actions that you got to take if you're going to make sure that you're a part of the progress. And this is not, my last statement is not to discourage you, but I want you to also take this with you, because you won't be able to say that a sister didn't tell you this. You're saying that you lost friends before and that you'll lose friends again. But see, you lost friends in order to change your life and to grow a business and to create something that you love. You said, but what about when what you have to gain is greater? Well, the greater depends on the value system. Because see, Black people have had to make decisions, and the greater that we had was pride in standing up for our people. The greater that we've had is not being a victim to the system. The greater that we've had is making sure that we're taking over the narrative in our families, and et cetera, et cetera. It hasn't always had a monetary gain associated with it. We'll see what's greater to you when it affects your bottom line. Because it's not going to be just relationships that you're going to lose. It's going to be financial opportunities. That's what I'm saying. When you really think about this lifestyle change, is losing the financial opportunities is the greater of knowing that you did what's right really going to be enough for you to stay in there. There are some people that exist that their why is about values, and that is enough for them. But you asked, how can you help? You asked what this would look like. And so I'm just bringing it to your awareness right now, and you'll be able to go back and look at this and say, I said that I can handle it. I said that I can handle it. And you're either going to have to recant and say, I'm going to have to figure out how I can kind of do this differently to save, myself being able to live in the same place that I'm staying in. Or am I going to have to make some temporary adjustments? Everybody won't necessarily have to deal with that level of suffering, but I'm just saying that a lot of people aren't addressing the reality. You have decided that you wanted to engage in a war, sir, and nobody engages in war without considering the casualties. And so somebody got to get their leg shot off. Somebody has to die in war. And what will the death of you be? Your mindset and your cushy comforts. But when it's all over with, will you come out with your Purple Heart and your stripes and your rewards and your honors because you did the right thing? So we all have talked a lot, and of course, since you've been able to speak in between all of us, you can definitely have a last remark, but I want to ask the ladies before we get ready to get out of here, was there any last thing that you wanted to say to Mike? Or are you guys good? Give me a head nod or something.
I can. So something I, kind of was just noodling around. It's, as we've pointed in some other ways alluded to, it's multi-layered, right? It's the acknowledgement, it's the investment, it's the inclusion, it's the influence. And we recognize that, we're at a point right now where we've rolled back 50, 60 years. And we never believed that equality was going to be easy. We recognize that we need others to help us to get there. And so, as August said, it will be a sacrifice. And this is not a game. because we've been given everything all this time. Not everybody is ready to do the same with us. So it is something that you are going to, have to search yourself to make this decision of what you're willing to do. And when you have, to be able to stand up and very clearly say what that is that you're going to do. Be explicit on what it is that you are doing, and what you're giving, and how you're showing up.
You have anything, Imani? Okay. So you want to have a last word, Mike? I want to tell you thank you. I do appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, I mean it's heavy. It's heavy going. It's hard hitting. I knew this was going to be hard. I knew this was going to be tough. I knew going into it, I had to process the fact that I am going to be taking the brunt of it, and I accepted that. That's why I agreed. That's why I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was getting myself into. That's why I didn't, when I messaged you and I was like, right, okay, let's just see what she says, because you could have said no, right? You could have said too emotional right now. I'm not in a good place, right? Because you had every right to be, and I would have been okay with that, right? I didn't expect anything to come of it, and you replied straight away. You're like, are you open to do it? Are you wanting to have a conversation with us first so that we can get to know your intentions? And I thought, okay. I had to process that was the situation, and that it was going to be difficult. It was going to be uncomfortable. I had to have my own realizations just talking to the women that I was talking to, that it was going to be difficult. I had to process that before I replied, because I was like, this is going to mean so much to me, because I do want to change. I do want to do something about it. And there's no one better to talk to. There's no one better to ask, because we can try, but trying isn't enough anymore, because loads of people have probably said to you that they've been trying. They've probably said to you that they're going to try, but from everything that I've had to handle, and just the level of discomfort that you've had, that you've all had to deal with, I feel if because it was the same with everything else that I've done, I felt the sort of, I should be willing to do at least the same. So I should be willing to be uncomfortable, to struggle, to have to battle my own morals, if you will. I mean the battling the whole morals thing shouldn't happen. It may happen. It may come up. I may have to decide what to do. I may have to decide what to base my decisions on, getting back to the intentional side. Like, what's my intention going into this? And yeah, my eyes have been open a hell of a lot more than I thought they were. There's the whole, hey, you thought you were getting somewhere, check this lot out, right? There was a whole, you thought you were making progress, you thought you were helping, you thought you were making the headway mentally, but this is what it's really like. And in a way, although it won't really matter, it won't make a difference to how you feel. I can't apologize for what's happened. It's horrible.
We and please understand, we don't want you to apologize for anything that anybody else has done. We really don't. And regardless of whether or not it was intentional or because of your upbringing and not knowing, the thing about Black people is Black people are very compassionate people. We're just happy that you're aware and that you're making a conscious decision and a conscious effort to go towards making a change. There's somebody out there who had a daddy that was abusive. When he became a father, he's not abusive anymore. And maybe, you know, the son, can he really apologize to the women that he beat? Can he really, you know, be responsible for the sins of the father? He really technically he can't. However, if he at one point maybe didn't put his hands on a woman but was kind of cussing her out or kind of rough or harsh with women, he will have to acknowledge that maybe somewhere in his upbringing and seeing his dad being rough with women, that he didn't necessarily know how to treat women and that he had to get educated on how to do a better job and acknowledge his behaviors and then look at his soul and say, at the end of the day, I don't even want to be mean to women, and then correct his own behavior. For right now, that's the best analogy that I have for you. No, you didn't put us on slave ships. No, you didn't, you know, take our men and literally fuck them in the ass to make sure that you broke their spirit. And we don't want you to apologize for what all your ancestors did. But unlike them, there are some trickles of behaviors where maybe you didn't acknowledge us or you didn't realize white privilege and stuff like that. And so you've done some things. And the only thing you can say is that at the heart and the core of me, that's not who I am. And I want to do and I want to be better. I don't want to mistreat people. And I also don't want to walk around and not acknowledge that people have been mistreated. That, you know, that's how I feel about you. And so the only thing that you can do is just say, wow, I didn't want to be a part of the problem, but even though it might have seemed like it was minuscule, I was, and now I make a conscious decision to be a part of the solution. And so for the white people that are out there that truly, really do that, Black people honor that. But we are in a place and we are in a position where white people, we are looking at you with a microscope that sees into the galaxies. And we have learned to not give terms as allies too quickly. So we see, we feel, and we acknowledge your pain. We also give you all the time and space that you need to process through your stuff. And you know why? Because our movement is going to continue to move whether white people join us or not. We're not rushing anybody. We're not requiring anybody. We're just saying, do you. Because unfortunately, there's some Black people that ain't doing what we think they need to do. There are some of us who have a made up mind that in whatever fashion we can, we're changing the narrative on all this bullshit. So some of us are militarizing. Some of us are taking on the food. Some of us are taking on the banks. Some of us are taking on the politics. Some of us are out here taking on the heavy work of entrepreneur building and doing all kinds of shit. We are all out here doing what we can, and we're going to change it. And so my last challenge to you and to anybody else that watches, and guess what? This is something I've taught my clients since day one. And I've had one in particular whose nerves I used to get on. Eliminate the word try from your conversation. Eliminate the word try. Well, for me, you know, it's like the song with Aaliyah. At least first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. You know, that's how people try to justify it. Try means that you're in a perpetual state of attempting. Try means that you have subconscious triggers that, you know, I'll, you know, just a little bit. And if it works, it works. And if it didn't, at least I can say, I tried. When we get to the point that our mind is resolute, we say, I will. We say, I am. We say, it is. So you're not going to try to be a better person. You're not going to try to understand. You're not going to try to figure out how you can, you know, begin to build and forge stronger relationships. You're not going to try to acknowledge us. You're not going to try to invest with us. When you get to that point where, like the women write with the lipstick on the mirror, your mirror says, every single day of my life until the day that I die, I will acknowledge and forge relationships with Black people. I will invest money with them, not because they're a charity case, but because they are the best candidate for the job. I will make sure that I fight against injustice. I am. Those are only two things you got. And I actually prefer I am versus or any same thing that's saying in motion, even more so than I like I will. Because I will is futuristic, and to a degree, that means that you still haven't started just yet. That's another issue with white people. Oh, I will do this. I will do that. And then you find yourselves in research mode and always trying to go for that understanding that I was talking about earlier, versus you saying, this is my way of life. This is what I am doing. This is who I am. This is who I be. And this is what it is. So if there's any person, even if you're Black, but any white person that happen to come and watch this video and you make it all the way to the end, you got to stop saying what you want to do, what you're going to try to do, and you got to make a decision to say, this is how I live my life right now, henceforth, and forevermore. If you revolution ready, we ain't got time for no contemplating. Got to do it now. So thank you again, Mike. Thank you, ladies. And Camille had an appointment. Thank you all for, coming and joining us. I'm sure that this is the first of many more dialogues to come. I know some of y'all out there that you're tired of talking, but you know what? As a marriage coach down there at the bottom would say, communication is key in everything. And so unfortunately, we can't get tired of talking. We just can't get lost in talking. These conversations have to be had. So we are out of here to Facebook and YouTube.